Hi friends, today we're turning my basic builder grade pantry into a moody, custom, Pinterest-worthy space. This is one of those projects that I really wasn't sure how it would turn out, but it ended up being one of my absolute favorite transformations to date. This whole makeover kind of started in a funny way. I was scrolling Pinterest one day and I came across this pin of a beautiful, moody pantry with the most beautiful accent lighting, and I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to do this in my pantry. And so the next day I went back to find that pin and I could not find it. Like, it was gone. It was not in my history. I hadn't pinned it, couldn't find it. So I decided that I was just going to have to recreate it on my own. I started doing some research and I stumbled across this Etsy shop that does 3D printed arches, which I felt would be so perfect in this space. It's genius because they make it so easy. You don't have to do any drywall work. You don't have to use any power tools. So it's a super approachable way to DIY an arch doorway in your home. Basically, you measure your doorway and order it to size. And when they arrive, each side of the arch comes in 3 different pieces. So you glue the 3 pieces together. For mine, I used super glue, which is what the shop recommended. And once they were fully dry, I went ahead and used liquid nails to install them into the doorway. Then I just used a little bit of some painter's tape to hold them in place and allow it to cure overnight. Once the arches were up, it was time to cover the seams and everything in drywall compound. My best advice here is to not get caught up in perfection like this first round. Just get the drywall mud up on the wall and let it dry, and then come back to refine it. It doesn't look pretty at first, but I promise you, once you start sanding, it's going to look so much better. So don't worry too much on this first round. Instead of dry sanding, which can make a huge mess, I like to use a damp sponge. It keeps the dust at bay and honestly makes cleanup so much easier. So after the first coat dried, I went in and used the damp sponge to knock down any of the high points. And then once that dried, I could go in and apply my second coat of mud. This is where you can press a little bit harder with your knife and really fill in any of those low spots. For me, this was a 3 to 4 pass process of mudding and sanding and letting things dry before it was smooth. Once the drywall was finished and dry, it was time to prime and paint. If you have textured walls, this would be where you would need to texture your walls, but lucky for me, I don't have any texture. All I had to do was prime my walls and then roll on the paint, and it was perfectly blended. Now that the arch was done, it was time for the fun part, which was choosing a color. I narrowed it down to these 3 chocolate browns I found on Pinterest. The first one is Rojo Marron. I love this one, but it had a little bit of a red tint to it. The second was the color Wenge, which was very beautiful, but it leaned a little dark and it almost looked black. What I really wanted was a true brown, and so this last option was Barista, and this is the one that I ultimately decided to go with. It's a rich, warm tone, and it was just right. I even polled my Instagram, and you guys agreed with me that Barista was the winner. For this pantry makeover, I went ahead and added 2 extra shelves to my pantry because why not? More storage is always better. At the beginning of this year, I made it my goal to not be afraid to use power tools and to not be afraid to take on larger DIY projects because I feel like it was holding me back. And this project right here is just a prime example of, number one, how far I've come because I didn't own any power tools really before this year. But it also shows that I am really capable of doing things. So if you have dreams and hopes of doing your own DIY projects, but you are holding yourself back because of using power tools or you're worried about taking on larger projects for your skill levels, please know that you can totally do this. You are 100% capable. For this project, I decided to buy one of those budget paint sprayers from Amazon, and I'll be honest, I did not think a $40 sprayer was actually going to do a good job, but I figured I might as well test it out on this project, especially because the pantry had so many little nooks and crannies. And let me tell you, it was a total game changer. It only took me about an hour to spray everything, and that's with it being my very first time using a paint sprayer ever. I did get a little heavy-handed on that first coat though, so I had to go back in with a roller to knock down some of the drips. But in the end, it evened out beautifully and I got the whole pantry covered in basically one pass. I am so glad that I had the good sense to plastic off the rest of the house from the pantry because there was a bit of overspray. So if you do end up getting a paint sprayer for any of your home projects, please make sure that you plastic everything down. So while the walls were drying, I used the sprayer again to paint some of my old rattan pantry boxes in the same color. I wanted it to have that full color drenched look where the storage bins really just kind of blend into the walls. So the sprayer for this project definitely earned its keep, and I would 100% buy it again. It was well worth the $40. Next up was lighting, because what's a moody pantry without good lighting? I had researched a ton of options and finally found this LED system that I really liked. It comes with a hub where you can plug in 6 separate strips, which was perfect since I decided to add those extra shelves. These LED strips were super easy to install. You just peel the backing and stick them in place, and you can cut them down to size. Just make sure you unplug it before you cut it, obviously. There's marked spots that show you exactly where it's safe to cut. I've used this style of LED lights before, and they've always worked great. Once I took a step back, though, I realized that the shelf fronts didn't have any kind of edge, and the lighting just felt a little too harsh and direct. So I decided to add trim pieces to the front of each shelf. I didn't film this part because, to be honest, by this stage, I was just ready to wrap the project up. But it was such a good call because the edging really softened the lights and gave the pantry a really custom finished look. Now that the painting and lighting were finished, it was time to start the really fun part, which was styling. For the labels, I wanted something really custom and elevated, and I actually found this company that made the prettiest labels, but they don't ship to the US, so I decided to make my own. I designed a set in Canva using a font I loved and then printed them off on these 2x2 off-white sticker labels. It was such an easy DIY, and it gave me the exact look I wanted. I've been collecting canisters for years. I have some Weck jars with wood lids and some old IKEA jars. Plus, I purchased these new glass canisters I found on Amazon with these really beautiful walnut lids. I ordered a few sets of these just to tie everything together and to really fill in the pantry. Then I layered in these scalloped rattan baskets from Amazon. I thought these would be perfect for all of our jarred goods. To add even more storage, I brought in my stackable wooden organizer bins, and for these, I filled them up with produce from our garden, like spaghetti squash, acorn squash, and a few other varieties that we've been growing this summer. It gave the pantry this whole, farmer's market vibe. Not only practical, but also very pretty. And finally, I styled the walls. I added these rattan wall baskets and filled them with shallots and garlic, and I also bundled up some fresh herbs from our garden and hung them up to dry. For the last touch, I added a small piece of leaf art from Target's fall collection this year, and those cozy little wall details made the pantry feel all the more layered and cozy, almost like it was its own little room instead of just storage. So here's a look back on where we started with this project. My pantry was basic, cluttered, and just really didn't have any kind of character at all. Once it was all styled, I stepped back and I thought, this might be one of my best projects yet. I am so proud of how it turned out. The rich brown paint, the custom lighting, the canisters, the baskets, it all came together even better than I imagined. Now the pantry has become one of my favorite spaces in the house, and it's just so cool to me that a small, everyday space can feel this special. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this pantry makeover as much as I loved creating it, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more DIY projects and home transformations like this one. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!